Hey y'all, welcome back. My name is Sarah and I make videos about movies, TV shows, thrift shopping, living in the city of Philly, whatever. But today I wanted to talk about the movie Swallow. If you've watched the trailer or even if you've seen stills from the movie, the idea is that this woman starts eating inedible objects. But that's not all. So I knew it was something that I wanted to see, but I also felt like I had to be ready for it because she eats inedible objects and at one point they have to be retrieved. And you see that in the trailer. So I was like, gotta be ready for that kind of stuff. Body stuff in certain contexts like this one where it seems very realistic. So I had to be ready for that mentally. Hunter, played by Haley Bennett, who is a fabulous actress, a newlywed, her and her husband, I don't think have been married very long. She's still decorating their first home beautifully. I mean, this place looks like something out of a magazine, and the way she dresses sort of reminds me of like a 1960s housewife where every hair is in place. She's constantly out of view of her husband. There's a lot of like body language and moments of silence that speak volumes in the story. She sort of comes alive when he comes home, when her husband comes home from work. He walks in with his briefcase and everything, and, she like runs up and hugs him and, asks about his day and all of these things and, has the paper ready, has his coffee ready, has his breakfast ready, makes dinner, and makes extra effort to make sure that things look as perfect as possible, including herself. Smoothing away wrinkles, cupping her hair to make sure that it's like perfectly, perfect. And within that is this like hum of tension between her and her husband, because you're like, she seems to be really stressed about these things and he doesn't appear to be overly precious about things the way that she is. And then the story continues and you learn a bit more about them and you're like, oh, okay. He's a little passive aggressive towards her about certain things. When she burned his tie, for example, that was clearly an accident, and he kind of, as though it was something that she should know. And as we learned pretty early on in the film, she came from retail. He's the rich asshole. She is just a regular girl who he, for some reason, fell in love with and married. And when I heard the story of how they met, which it was very natural for another character who doesn't know them very well, to ask about how they met and they're in love, la la. And then she finds out that she's pregnant. Now, her character, Hunter, processes things silently. And I think that is part of how she maintains control over herself and her surroundings, especially when we learn about Hunter later on. Because she appears to be just like anybody else. She plays games on her phone. She has an interest, a passion for art. She expresses that through what she chooses to cook and how she decorates the house. So she kind of exerts her personality silently in all these different ways. The way that she quietly asks about, is this okay? Are you mad? Those things kind of add to that tension, because it's like, why is she so timid with her husband? What is going on? Then she starts eating inedible objects. And the way that they portray this is so thoughtful, I thought, because she doesn't just pick up something randomly and eat it. She will choose specific items, observe them. That's what I mean by this like micro videography, where we get super, super close to the item. We observe the color, texture, almost as if we're trying to like they're trying to show you the item the way she sees it before she eats it. At first, it's items that you know will not be an issue, but then you start to become concerned for her, especially because she ingests each item the same way, as though they were all the same risk to her body. So we see her entire ritual when she chooses an item, when she eats it, her reaction afterwards, and then when that item passes, what is that ritual like, and how she displays these items. So Hunter doesn't have any secrets that if anybody was looking in their apartment, they wouldn't be able to find anything. There will be nothing there that shows that this is going on. As her pregnancy develops, that is when they find certain objects in her body, perform surgery to remove them, and then it comes to light that she's been eating these things on purpose, and then the consequences with that, which are so emotional and yet not at the same time. I think that a lot of the things that we are shown are designed to elicit a response from the audience because that response is not coming from the characters. For example, we learn very early on that Hunter does not have a relationship with her family. So we see her husband's family, her mother-in-law and her father-in-law, and their responses to this whole thing, them finding out about the objects, how they speak to her, and then recommending that she go to a therapist, and then her continuing to eat the inedible objects, and then them jumping to hiring a man to watch her. The way that they are putting this incredible pressure on Hunter through these comments that they make, the way that they responded to her condition was humiliating. And all of the events that once it started escalating, all of these small events that created this incredibly toxic environment, because it's coming from everywhere. Hunter doesn't have any friends and is not really encouraged to. Her husband told everyone in his office about Hunter's condition. So when they had a housewarming party after Hunter had finished decorating and everything, everybody knew she was upset, but upset in a way that was still like tightly controlled. And you could see as her pregnancy developed that Hunter's control on herself was slipping, and in combination with the pressure from her husband and his family, she was starting to crack, like mentally, but silently. Hunter cried, but it was like always controlled. You could see her working things out for herself, but mostly silently. And that was heartbreaking in and of itself. And when she goes to the therapist and starts to talk about her past and her family, the way she grew up, the circumstances around her conception, that was like, what? And her therapist, I don't want to believe it, but I had an inkling. Her therapist disclosing all of the information from their sessions to her husband. Such a violation. And then him confronting her with it, which of course he did, because why wouldn't he confront her with information that he got directly from her therapist? Because you get the feeling that Hunter has never told another living soul about that. So you hear her for the first time talk about how it feels when she eats those things and what she thinks about, and that fills in those silent spaces for the viewer. And to me that makes sense, because if up until now Hunter has never told anyone about this, she was never going to speak about it out loud. She was never going to write about it in a diary. She was never going to talk about it with anyone. the ball became a boulder as the boulder started rolling downhill as far as Hunter's complete psychological breakdown, culminating in her escape from her and her husband's home, going on the lam, as it were, finding her biological father, confronting him, and what she experienced in that confrontation, and moving forward from there, again, mostly silently, deciding for herself what she wanted from her life and her future. From the trailer, it looks beautiful. Like the way that it's shot, the interior design, the camera work, which has these great wide shots with the characters centered, use of color, and almost like micro videography where you're zooming in super tight on these really tiny objects and then super wide. Makes for a very visually engaging film to me, because you get these close-ups of the characters' faces. You get these like super wide shots where you get more context of what you're looking at. So it's not just that she's looking off into the distance with the camera being right here. A wider shot shows you that there's a big old dude standing in the background with his arms kind of like folded, sort of like observing her, not standing over her, but he's in the background. His presence is there, and it doesn't appear that he's her husband or a relative or anybody else. He looks like what he is, which is a bodyguard of some kind. Odd, and why? There is a slight thriller aspect to it, especially when she escapes from the house. I was like, oh no. Because the way that the in-laws escalated their behavior in regards to this was quite frightening. It was quite frightening. And also with Hunter's behavior escalating, she wanted answers to something and rightfully deserved those answers. So she made a plan and moved forward with it to confront her biological father and then decide what her next step was gonna be. I think the story ended the way that was genuine to her character, because Hunter has no support from anyone at this point. She's left her husband, they're crazy, and her family does not support her. So she has to decide how she's going to take care of herself and how she's going to move on from this. I thought the story was amazingly well told, amazingly well acted, and I would recommend it. I would give Swallow, because I was genuinely surprised over and over by what I learned in the story, a character, action that genuinely surprised me. Like that man helping her, I was genuinely surprised by that. The way he talked, which he spoke very little about his past, but the information that we got made me not think that he was gonna help her at all. I would give Swallow a 4 out of 5. I want to give it a 5 out of 5, but the only film I think I've given a 5 out of 5 to is Eve's Bayou, and that just, I would recommend it. If you can't handle body stuff, do not watch this movie, because they show some things. Despite the clean, modern way that it's shot with ooh, look at this perfectly curated mid-century modern home, and they're such a cute couple. Don't be fooled by that, because the story is much deeper and much more layers and themes and symbols in the story than the glossy, beautiful trailer would want you to believe. So if you guys have seen the movie, please let me know what you think. If you guys haven't seen the movie, if you're looking for something similar to this, I'm trying to think, the movie Violet with Olivia Munn, or the movie Alice Darling with Anna Kendrick, They both have a sort of similarly slightly darker undertone to them. Violet is not as intense as Swallow, and Alice Darling either, but they have a similar storyline of like a woman reaching a critical point in their life and taking dramatic action in order to find relief or to make changes in their lives for different reasons, but yes. So thank you guys for spending your time here with me today. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you guys next time.